Mozart, I didn't hear you walk in. Who wants to learn a little music theory today? This week, I have for you a lesson on the major scale, and it's the musical scale that we're all most familiar with. It's the staple of pretty much everything you hear on the radio. And to help with this, I'm actually going to move over to the piano for a little bit, because I find that music theory is easier to explain on the piano. It just looks a lot more streamlined. But don't worry, we'll be coming back to the good old sixth string. For the sake of ease, these keys have all been labeled, and today we're going to be working in the key of C. Now, if you don't have a labeled keyboard, which, let's be realistic, most keyboards are not labeled, there's an easy way to find it. If you take a look at the black keys, there's a set of 3 and a set of 2, and it goes like that all along the keyboard. So you want to take a look at the set of 2, and look at the one on the left, and then the white key directly to the left of that will always be C. Whether it's up here, or down here, or way up here, that's how you find C. So scales are made up of whole steps and half steps. And just for a second, take into account all of the white keys and all of the black keys. If we're starting on C, then the next note that we're going to play is the black key in between C and D. That's a half step. Going directly from C to D would be a whole step. And this black key here, depending on the context, you might call it a C sharp or a D flat. But that's why we're working in the key of C today, because there are no sharps and flats. It's all natural notes. You're going to start on C and end on C. Easy. Most of these notes have a sharp or flat in between them. The two exceptions to this rule are B and C. There's a half step in between those two natural notes. And the other exception is between E and F. Also a half step in between those two notes. The rest are all whole steps. So what does any of that actually mean on a fretboard? Well, I'm glad you asked. Simply put, each fret indicates a half step, like we talked about before. So if you play the open E and play the first fret, you'll have an F. Just remember, there's no sharp or flat in between E and F. It's just a half step. Then you have F sharp and then G, G sharp and then A sharp and then B and then C. There's our C note on the low E string. So to start our scale pattern, we're going to use our middle finger actually on the 8th fret of the low E, and with our pinky we're going to play the 10th fret on the low E. Then we're going to move up to the 5th string, and starting with our first finger now, we're going to play 7, 8, 10. Then on the 4th string, we're going to go 7, 9, 10. The 3rd string is the same, 7, 9, 10. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but the B string is going to be the same as the low E. With the middle finger, you're going to go 8, 10. And then on the high E, you're going to go 7, 10 with your first and second, or 7, 8 on your first and second finger. So from start to finish, we have... Now, if you want to fact check yourself, so to speak, make sure you're playing it correctly, you start on the high C and play it backwards. It should sound like Joy to the World. This scale is a little bit trickier than the minor pentatonic that we covered last week, but once you get comfortable with it, you can start practicing with it the same way. You can try using the threes pattern that we covered, for example. So with those 5 parts of the beginner series that I did, I made sure that everything was in the same key so you could practice it all together and that it would sound good. This is not in the same key as it is, but if you want it to be, you can always find G and start it there. So once again, we backtrack a little bit and go E, F, F sharp, G. And now you just have to play that exact same pattern. And that's your G major scale. Guys, I hope you found this video interesting this week. If you feel a little bit confused, I'm going to be honest with you, that is completely normal. Music theory is a rabbit hole that goes very, 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 very deep, and you should see some of the stuff that I cut from this lesson. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, and that's okay. I've been at this for years, and I still feel like a dum-dum half the time. Just take one little bite at a time, and before you know it, you'll have eaten a whole meal. If you guys have any questions at all, or if you have some ideas for what you want to see in future content, drop a comment down below. I'd always appreciate it. And if you want to get a jump start learning music theory outside of my weekly lessons, musictheory.net is a great resource. I'll post a link down to it down in the doobly-doo, and it'll start you off at the very fundamentals, and you can learn comfortably at your own pace. It's a great resource, and I'd highly recommend it. And now, as always, the most important lesson of the week, have fun. I'll see you guys next time.